Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 19th, 2021 City of Imperial Beach City Council meeting. It's 5 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And council members and staff, please mute yourselves, and when speaking at the appropriate time, please announce your name. I want to welcome everyone to our regular meeting today and thank everyone for their patience and understanding as we continue to improve our hybrid in-person and teleconference meeting process, and hopefully soon we'll move to in-person meetings when all that opens up for the state. This meeting must comply with Executive Order N2920 and all the other provisions of state law. And the city clerk will now announce the public comment process.
This is City Clerk Kelly. Members of the public are encouraged to submit their comments for any item on the agenda now via email to comments@imperialbeachca.gov, as no breaks will occur between agenda items. Please note in the subject line the item on the agenda that you wish to comment on. Specify if you would like your comment to be read aloud or just to be entered into the record. Written comments will be read by the city clerk or staff for up to 3 minutes. Public comments will be accepted until the mayor announces that public comment for that item is closed. For providing oral comments during this meeting, join Zoom via desktop computer, cell phone app, or telephone. The meeting details are located on the first page of the agenda. Members of the public will not be shown on video. You will be able to speak when called upon. When it is the appropriate time, use the raise hand feature on the desktop phone app, or press *9 on your telephone. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes so that business can be efficiently completed at the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. City Clerk Kelly, please take the roll. This is Mayor Dedina.
Councilmember Aguirre. Here. Councilmember Leyva Gonzalez.
Leyva Gonzalez here.
Councilmember Fisher.
Fisher here.
Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs.
Spriggs here.
And Mayor Dedina.
Dedina here. Great. And now Councilmember Fisher will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. Now, Assistant City Manager Cortez Martinez has an announcement.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, members of the public. I am happy to announce that on Monday,
Can we turn
May
that on?
24th, Mar Vista High School at their gym at 501 Elm Avenue from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. will be providing free COVID-19 vaccinations for all Mar Vista High School students and Sweetwater students from ages 12 and up. There will be a parent consent required for anybody who is minor, 17 or less. So again, Monday, May 4th at Mar Vista High School. We're excited to launch this, and more information will be published on our website and social media.
Thank you very much, Assistant City Manager Cortez Martinez, and I appreciate you making that happen. City Clerk Kelly, do you have any public comments?
This is City Clerk Kelly. I will begin with members of the public participating via Zoom. If there's members of the public wishing to speak under public comments, please use the raise hand feature. There is one speaker. Mr. Preston, you have 3 minutes. Please unmute yourself and begin.
Hello, Mayor Dedina and City Council members. My name is David Preston. I'm a resident of Imperial Beach. I was born and raised here. I've been away now for almost 20 years, and I finally came back after 20 years, mostly on the East Coast. I just wanted to say that I had a wonderful time this past weekend at the sports park. I had an opportunity to take part in the art event. And the reason I'm voicing my comment is because I know that the skate park potentially will be on the agenda today or in future agendas. And I really take great notice to the skate park because it's a big part of my family. I'm a very involved father. I go to the skate park with my son, and we're there on a daily basis. So hopefully, whatever plans we have as a city, myself, my family, and hopefully some of my skater friends will have some input and some say. But it definitely is an important part of our community. I know that sometimes it can be an attraction for mischief, and I hope to be part of that solution. So just wanted you to know that, council members and mayor. I'm looking forward to supporting your positive agendas, and that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Preston. Welcome back. It's nice to meet you on the weekend with your son, and look forward to seeing you around town more and having you involved in more things in the city. So appreciate you getting in touch. And now we have any additional public comments? Sorry.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have Janine Hayes. Please unmute yourself and begin.
Hi, this is Jamie Hottie and Deanna Rose. We host the third annual Dade Avenue Block Party. We only use half the block of the Dade Avenue between 2nd and 3rd Avenue, and the last two block parties we've had to pay $125 and would like you to consider either waiving the $250 or deduct it. We also have to pay $75 for a permit. The date is September 25th, 2021, noon to 5. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, there are no raised hands and no written comments.
Great. Thanks, everybody. And now we will go on to item number 1, and that's presentations, consideration of proclamation for National Public Works Week. City Clerk Kelly, before I read this, are there any public comments?
Mr. Mayor, there are no raised hands and no written comments.
Great. The public comment period is now closed. I'm going to read the proclamation, and then we can ask for a roll call vote to approve it. And that is it's a proclamation for National Public Works Week for 2021. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and the well-being of the people of California. And whereas these infrastructures, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals, who are engineers, managers, and employees from the state and local governments and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Serge Dedina, Mayor of the City of Imperial Beach, California, together with the City Council, hereby designate the week May 16th to 23rd, 2021 as National Public Works Week. I urge all our people to join in with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. Dated May 19th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve the proclamation?
Fisher, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
City Clerk Kelly, please take a oral roll call vote.
This is City Clerk Kelly. I will now take an oral roll call vote. There has been a motion by Fisher, second by Spriggs, to approve the proclamation. Councilmember Aguirre, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Leyva Gonzalez, how do you vote?
Leyva Gonzalez, aye.
Councilmember Fisher, how do you vote?
Fisher, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs, how do you vote?
Spriggs, aye.
And Mayor Dedina, how do you vote?
Dedina, aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
And just bear with me, City Council, because the way we're doing this was to read it first and then do the roll call vote, and then we can have a discussion. So just to be clear, Councilmember Aguirre, any comments?
None of this time. Thank you.
Councilmember Leyva Gonzalez, any comments?
No comments at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Fisher?
I just want to say thanks to all those men and women from the city. It's the largest department in the city for all that they do. There's not a day that goes by when you move through the city and don't see the work trucks out there with people actively engaged in making us a better community. So thanks for all you do.
Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs? Comments?
I'd like to echo that. I was going to say make a very similar comment that very often the public works staff are not visible until there's a problem, and their job is essentially to keep the working aspects of the city running smoothly, and they do an outstanding job here in our beautiful city of Imperial Beach. And I just want to commend Eric Minicelli and all of his staff for the fantastic work that they do. And this proclamation is the least that we can do to honor those efforts.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I just want to echo that and thank our public works guys. And obviously with infrastructure on the minds of everybody, this is more important than ever. And, when we think about how well we do things, all we have to do is look south of the border where we have all these problems because they haven't invested in their public infrastructure. Maybe they're not talking about Public Works Week, but I do appreciate more than ever the amazing work of our Public Works Department and all the Public Works professionals and our City Council and staff who make all that happen. So thank you so much. With that, we will move on to the consent calendar. Oh, and just a note, my council colleagues, with this hybrid, some people are here, and hopefully we'll move back to full-time because we have the Zoom thing and then the hybrid thing where some of us are here. It's a little complicated, and I know last time that I asked if you were finished. Watching the screen and then listening from above, there's a little bit of a lag. So if I ask you if you're done, it's not because I'm trying to interfere. It's more because I'm just trying to make sure that you are, and it's just a little complicated. So bear with me, be patient. If you have any clarifications, if I ask you if you're done, it's only because I want to make sure that I'm not, no one's cutting you off. So anyway, any questions on that or comments? Great. Thanks for your patience on this. And now we have consent calendar items 1 through 5.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to have a short or make a few comments about consent item 5, which is my colleague, Councilmember Paloma Aguirre's request for an agenda item, which I fully support. I don't know whether we need to pull the item for that or not.
I think you have to pull an item to discuss it in consent, right? If we're going to have some clarification on it?
Yes, Councilmember Spriggs, this is Manager Hall. I think a lot of it depends on the nature of your question. If you're asking for a clarification, we could probably clarify that. If you would like to further discuss the item and have any meaningful discussion with other members of the City Council, we'd probably need to pull that item and place it at the end of the agenda.
I just want to clarify the meaning of the item. If I can pull it up. Is it possible to pull it up on the screen so that everybody can see what we're talking about? And this won't take long. It's just a clarification of language that's already in it.
Councilman Spriggs, this is Manager Hall. It's probably easier if I read the actual item on the agenda. We don't have that slide prepared, so let me read that real quickly for you. Item number 5, request by Councilmember Aguirre to place an item on a future agenda to discuss safety and recreational uses on the Imperial Beach Pier and the current closure of the portion of the Imperial Beach Pier west of the Tin Fish Restaurant to fishing.
Right. Okay, there's two parts of that. One is general, the other is specific. The general part is safety and recreational uses of the pier, and the specific part has to do with fishing. I really support both of those, but I just wanted to make clear to my council colleagues, and if there's a concern about this, maybe we'll pull the item. And that is that there are a lot of concerns, I think, in our city about the general condition of the pier, the port's, the amount and quality of the port's investment in the pier, the restaurant, lots of issues, including the fishing aspect of it, that I just want to make sure that we are going to discuss when this item comes up as an agenda item, assuming we approve it to go on the agenda. That's my only clarification. There is the general language in the beginning that suggests that that's the case, but I just wanted to make that point clear that there are broader issues, and there are some broad issues involving the pier that also need to be discussed.
Thank you, Councilman
And
Spriggs.
I don't know whether Councilmember Gary, who's proposing this, whether that's okay with her. I've not had an opportunity to discuss it with her.
Thank you, Councilmember Spriggs. No, you're fine. Thank you. I guess that's more of a procedural question because I do see what you're saying and I agree. I think that it's just not recreational uses. It's beyond that, not just fishing as well. I don't know if Ms. Lyon, if this is something that you could help us guide. Is this something that if we're going to add that language, do we need to make an amendment to the item or can we just add those additional areas of focus that Councilmember Spriggs mentioned right now when we do bring it back for a full discussion?
Councilmember Gary, this is Manager Hall. I think you make a really good point. I think that there is enough discussion and enough concern about that perhaps the safe ground here is to remove that, to seek a motion to remove that item from the consent and place it at the end of the agenda so that we can have a little bit more robust discussion about it so that we don't infringe on, if you will, the intention behind the Brown Act, which is to only discuss items that are on the agenda. So it might be best if we pull that item.
I understand that. I actually prefer to bring it at a full, council meeting with proper public notice so that the community can also have an opportunity to express their comments, concerns, and views, more so than at the end of today's meeting. So my question was more procedural in the sense of if we do approve it right now and it comes back to a full item on the agenda in a future meeting, are we able to add some of the language or some of the focus areas that Councilmember Spriggs is suggesting?
Yes. Yes, and I think you brought up another point that we should clarify. The item on the agenda tonight is not to discuss anything about the pier. It's a discussion about whether or not we should have an agenda item on a future council meeting to discuss the pier. So I know that's a little bit of a nuance, but I want to make it clear we're not talking about the pier tonight. We're talking about whether or not to place an item on a future agenda. So that clarification was very helpful. So thank you for that. So, Councilmember Spriggs, if that did not clarify your concerns, then we should probably move the item to the end of the agenda. If everyone is clear on the request, which is to place an item on a future agenda, then we could probably handle it as a consent item.
I think it's a consent item because my understanding is that the person placing it on the request for this to be on the agenda, Councilmember Gary, seems to be comfortable with the interpretation of the broader language that allows us to get into the a fuller discussion of the pier, including but not limited to fishing.
Okay, and Mr. Mayor, there are some comments on this item as well. So as we go through the consent calendar, I think there's only items on this item. Is that correct? There's some oral comments and written comments on item number 5 on consent.
Right. Let's
do. Councilmember Gary nodded at her consent, but for the record, is it okay with you, that interpretation, Councilmember?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for noticing that.
Can we go to public comment, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I will begin with members participating through Zoom. The first speaker is Eric Syverson. Mr. Syverson, please unmute yourself and begin.
Yes, my name is Eric Syverson, Imperial Beach native, a former Imperial Beach resident, but someone with the Syverson name, and my extended family has lived in Imperial Beach and currently lives in Imperial Beach since 1950. You guys had a pretty good discussion about an item that you weren't going to discuss, quite honestly. You had a thorough discussion about an item you weren't going to discuss on the consent calendar. You need to move it completely. Need to be completely honest about the city's move to get rid of fishing from the fishing pier. And the city's move in all of its areas to increase the environment and decrease human interaction in said environment, which is the antithesis of how anyone who would support environmental justice, social justice, economic justice, or any justice for that matter. It is a cultural thing, fishing. It is a subsistence thing, fishing. It supersedes surfing and any other water recreational activities. In addition, the pier was originally made for energy generation back in 19 09, 1910. I forget which iteration of the pier did that, but that would be too innovative for this city. For you to even suggest and then have a full discussion on the consent sound and beat around the bush about whether we're going to fish, whether we're going to abolish fish, whether we're going to not. I mean, how many more no signs are we going to put up in Imperial Beach? How many more activities that Dempsey Holder would take part in that we are going to make illegal in this city? Honestly, Mayor, how many? Anybody got an answer? No fishing, no fishing, no this, no that? I'm confused. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Brian Kitchens. Mr. Kitchens, please unmute yourself and begin. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, Mayor, Council. I don't reside in Imperial Beach. I reside about a block outside of Imperial Beach in South San Diego. Imperial Beach has been a big part of my life. For 47 years, I served in the Navy here. I served and got my Eagle Scout here. I went to high school here. The pier is very important to me. It's a place where my father and I used to go fishing at when I was a kid growing up, and being off the end of the pier as well. It's still, I spend 90% of my time in Imperial Beach. I spend most of my money in Imperial Beach, and I spend a lot of time on the pier and on the beach. So, and I think it's important for children and their parents to be able to enjoy it like it's meant to be. So I'd like to see it brought up on a future agenda. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. I will now begin with the written comments. The first message is from Sandra Brilhart, a resident of Imperial Beach, and she says, I think this is an important item number 5. I think this is an important issue that warrants discussion. I support putting this item on a future agenda, provided that the Port of San Diego is present and prepared to discuss their plans for the pier. Restricting the uses in the area behind the restaurant is a big improvement, in my opinion, but the port has fallen far short on its promises to make enhancements to the pier that will better accommodate the needs of all users. The next message is, I apologize if I mispronounce your name, Janine Hayes and Deanna Rose. And they say, we don't want to smell fish guts when eating at the tin fish. The next message is from Adriel B. Kitchens. Adriel B. Kitchens, and he provides an address in San Diego, support this item being placed on a future agenda for discussion, and that's item number 5. The next message is from Cheryl Quinones, an IB resident, and she says, good evening. Item 5, council member request for agenda item. Please vote to table this item and refer this discussion to the Parks and Recreation Committee for consideration at next steps forward. The next message is, good evening. Lisa Thomas, resident of Imperial Beach, California. I'd like to start by thanking Councilwoman Aguirre for proposing this discussion to be placed on a future agenda. As we all know, this is a very necessary topic of discussion. I'd like to encourage the mayor and fellow council members to unanimously approve this item to be placed on a future agenda for a progressive discussion. Thank you for taking my public comment into consideration. The next message is from Francie McDonald Pratt. Dear Mr. Hall, my husband Bob and I moved to Imperial Beach in November. We love the community. We often walk out on the pier and enjoy seeing the fishermen/women. They are a diverse group of people that seem to represent the community. It's great to see people have fun. At the end of the pier, by the tin fish, there is no fishing. We really like that because we can sit down, relax, and watch the ocean, surfers, etc. Please keep the current rule that prohibits fishing from that whole area at the end of the pier. We would very much appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact me, and contact information is provided. And the last message is from Nick Klein. Imperial Beach resident. Yes, I would like to have a future board discussion about keeping fishing open at the back of the pier behind Tin Fish forever. While we wait for that future discussion, I would request that the signs currently in place that say no fishing beyond this point at the front of the Tin Fish be removed until we as a community may be given the opportunity to have some input into this matter, and the board can discuss it as well, and some decisions can be made moving forward. I would also like to request the future meeting to take place when we are able to resume in person instead of online board meetings, because a large portion of the fishing community is elderly and a lot of our elderly community does not utilize electronics such as Zoom. Thank you so much for all you do, Nick Klein. And there is a raised hand by Cheryl Quinones. Ms. Quinones, please unmute yourself and begin. Into this matter.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, City Hall Manager. This is Cheryl Quinones. As a public community member, I'm requesting that this consent item be pulled from the consent calendar and brought forward for discussion this evening. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Mayor, that is the final public comment.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. The public comment period is now closed. We haven't got any council comments. Are there any council comments? Okay, and I'll make sure we can have council comments. Is that correct?
They can clarify. We just can't discuss the item.
That's right. Okay. Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Fine. Any clarifications on any item of the consent calendar? With that, is there a motion to approve consent calendar items number 1 through 5?
Spriggs, so move.
Aguirre, second.
City Clerk Kelly will now take an oral roll call vote.
This is City Clerk Kelly. I will now take an oral roll call vote. There has been a motion by Spriggs, second by Aguirre, to approve consent calendar item numbers 1 through 5. Councilmember Aguirre, how do you vote?
Aguirre, aye.
Councilmember Leyva Gonzalez, how do you vote?
Leyva Gonzalez, aye.
Councilmember Fisher, how do you vote?
Fisher, aye.
Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs, how do you vote?
Spriggs, aye.
And Mayor Dedina, how do you vote?
Dedina, aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Great. With that, we have public hearing number 1, and that's Resolution 2021-30, adopting the municipal budget for fiscal years 2021 and 22 and 2022-23, and electing the population and price adjustment factors and establishing fiscal year 2021 to 22 appropriations limit of the City of Imperial Beach pursuant to California Constitution Article 13B and Section 7900 of the California Government Code, and the 2-year FY 2022 and FY 23 budget and implementation schedule of the Capital Improvements Program. The public hearing is now open, and Assistant City Manager Cortez Martinez will introduce the item, followed by Finance Director Gidmet.
Good evening again, Mayor and City Council. Thanks for having us tonight. With guidance from you guys, the elected officials, working closely with the city manager and assistance with all the department heads. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. Here's a picture of our department heads for the first time we got together while our city manager was somewhere skiing up in the mountains. As you can see, it was early in the early stages where we could socially distance, and first time we got together. So it was very exciting, and worked really hard through getting your first draft budget before our public hearing. But thank you to our department heads and for the residents' input. And it's a pleasure for us to present to you our next 2-year budget. Next slide, please. So the proposed budget, it's not only a fiscal prudent and balanced document, but it also includes and identifies what elected officials and residents have indicated, and it reflects their priorities. It also includes policies of the City Council. So before I turn it to the talented Finance Director, John Gitman, I would like to join the Mayor and the City Council and the City Manager, along with our department heads and each of our staff members, in thanking our residents for their trust and passing Measure I. So in the slide before you, we have a summary of what Measure I has been included. Clean and safe neighborhoods. Our budget reflects the hire of the toll firefighter, the creation of the recreation program, the creation of the marine park safety program, creation of community response team, maintaining sheriff's services, and maintaining the animal controls. So we've heard you. We've established these priorities and we maintain safe and clean neighborhoods. And this is an ongoing effort. So thank you for trusting us. And now I would like to, and again, special thanks to our department heads for working so hard, and special thanks to our wonderful finance director, Joan Gitmit, our city manager, for this is a group effort, and it's endless of thankfulness. So I would like to take a moment to turn it out to our wonderful finance director, Joan Gitmit, who will walk you through the highlights of the budget. And any of the staff members, including department heads, are available to answer any of the questions that you may have throughout at the end of the presentation if any of the items come up. So with that, next slide, and John, take it away.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Cortez. I'd like to start out by thanking not only Assistant City Manager Cortez, but the rest of the council and the staff, the department heads, everybody in accompanying me through this journey. It has been a tough one, trying to make sure that we keep everything in line and we honor the wishes of our council and our citizens. So I'm hoping that this budget will adequately reflect that for you. So we are presenting the fiscal year 21-22 and 22-23 biennial budget, and we usually use some pretty standard principles and priorities in setting this budget up. First and foremost, staff strives to prepare a balanced budget, which we are presenting before you tonight. Additionally, we try to ensure that we have transparency, accuracy, and verification. And I can promise you in this budget, that was a big task. We went through every line item and tried to make sure that everything was valid and accurate. And then finally, most importantly, we do seek community input. So to kind of follow up on the community input, staff has tried numerous times and successfully to have some community outreach, initially with our April 7th City Council meeting when we gave our first presentation of the draft budget. And began discussing with our city council and our public. Following that April 7th meeting, we had two meetings, one on April 14th and one on April 20th, which were conducted via Zoom to abide by our social distancing. Additionally, on April 20th, we had a joint meeting of our Design Review Board, our our Parks and Rec Committee, and our Tidelands Advisory Committee, which also was a public meeting and opened for public comments on our budget. And then finally, we have tonight where we are having the public hearing and the consideration of our proposed budget with the budget adoption. So in summary, our budget really hasn't changed much since when we first presented it to you, with some minor modifications and just kind of amendments and cleaning up. So our current total revenue is now going to be $779,389. It's slightly above what we originally proposed, and that has to do with transfers of funds into our general fund, which I'll go over in more depth later on. For the most part, though, everything, as I said, stayed the same. So we're at $42.7 on our revenues. On the expenditure side, citywide, our total expenditures are $39,157,226. Again, almost identical to what we presented on our original draft budgets. With some minor modifications in our general fund and in our other category, again, related to our ARPA funds. So for our general revenue, this is how we now stand. Our general revenue is $24,786,763,000.
By the way, to interrupt, this is really well done. Thank you. It's very easy to follow. Appreciate it.
To start with, as you can see, all the categories, I tried to highlight where we would have had any changes. And as you can see in our revenue side, there was really no refinements. We had pretty well identified our revenues coming in. We felt very, very solid on our revenue streams, and those those proposals are all staying the same. Where we do have a variance is in our transfers. We are looking at an increase in our transfers coming into our general fund of $571,675. And again, this is all related to our ARPA funds and the transfers coming into the general fund, which I will go in more depth as we go through this. On the general fund expenditure side, we had a couple changes in our expenditures. One of them was in our administrative category by a minimal amount, $550, and that just had to do with an expenditure refinement in one of our departments. On the community services side, we had an increase of $45,000. This was due to the addition of a parking analysis study that had been requested by a member of the City Council, and then also a refinement of some utilities charges in our streets department. So that is what made up our $45,000 increase in our community services division. So basically, in summary, that's pretty much it. We're looking at a general fund revenue increase of $571,000. And as I said, these are transfers coming into the general fund. So we were able to identify a transfer that is supposed to be coming in for our public, or from our public education and government funds that will come into our general fund to cover costs related to that program. And then we have $563,000 that it will be transferred in from our miscellaneous grants fund, which is where we will be, I guess you could say, housing our American Rescue Plan Act funds. That transfer is to cover expenditures and allocations that were proposed to council in our first workshop, having to do with our revenue recoveries, our one-time expenditure costs, items that we believe will be adequate or will be covered by our ARPA funding. So those revenues were brought into the general fund to cover those expenditures. And then again, on the expenditure side, just what I just covered on the last slide, the $20,550 for expenditure refinements, the utilities, and the one additional cost, and then the $25,000 in our parking analysis study. The other changes that we're seeing were strictly in the internal service funds, and these were decreases in our expenditures, one of them in our information technology fund having to do with a personnel adjustment, so we were able to reduce that budget by about $6,300. And then in our facilities maintenance fund, we are anticipating a $30,000 increase in the expenditure, and that was really just a reallocation of the expenditure because it's for an HVAC unit that we were planning on replacing that we feel that we can use the ARPA funding for. So in the overall summary, our general fund, we are currently showing our revenues over our expenditures of about $690,000. Now, it's very, very important, as nice as that looks, to remember that those funds, or that surplus is being caused by one-time funds coming into the city. It just wouldn't be prudent at all if we were to try to reprogram those into ongoing uses. Because we would not have future revenue in order to cover that. So these one-time funds, it's best that we let sit in our general fund right now, I believe, in order to allow us to make sure that we recover from COVID, that we cover all of our COVID-related costs, that our reserves recover, and such. If we were to, as I said, if we were to program those, you would need to make sure that they're not for anything that would be considered an ongoing cost. So, and I put this little bullet here about the monitoring the ARPA, but in reality, that's going to kind of tag onto my next one. So I'm going to hold on to that comment just for a moment. So if you recall in our first presentation with you, we had gone through some of the use of the American Rescue Plan Act, or the ARPA funds. And this is what you see before you is the proposal that staff had. So one of the things that the guidelines state that we can do is recover our lost revenue. And we believe at this point in time that our lost revenue to the city will be about $1.3 million. We also believe that we can recover reduced expenditures or deferred expenditures, things that we had to put off last year because of having to cut back. There are building renovations to our sports park and some of our facilities that we believe qualify under the ARPA. One of the things that came up in discussion with council was business and vulnerable population assistance. So we had allocated towards that. And then there are some other COVID-related expenses, one-time type expenses that we feel can be covered by ARPA. And currently we're showing about $1.2 million that we have not assigned of those funds. Now, looking at that, there's a couple of things that I kind of want to touch base on. First of all, we are still anticipating a little over $5 million allocation from the federal government for this. However, we have not been given our actual allocations yet. There have been some comments out there that allocations aren't coming through quite the same as what was originally spoken of. So we don't want to commit and say this is exactly what we're going to have. So with that $1.2 million unassigned, that kind of ties into it. We feel right now it's best that we kind of leave that be until we see what our true allocations are going to be. Additionally, the guidelines are constantly changing. The Treasury right now is still modifying guidelines, and we don't know what's going to happen. They could take a turn on us, and something that we thought was eligible is no longer eligible. So that being said, we are going to make sure that we're consistently monitoring those guidelines, and if there's any changes to the anticipated expenditures that we had, we will be sure to make those modifications and notify you at the earliest opportunity. Outside of the general fund, these are our larger non-general fund department or funds, actually, not necessarily just the departments. And these departments pretty much all stayed the same, with the exception, as I had mentioned, the information technology had a slight decrease due to a personnel adjustment, and the facilities and park maintenance had a slight decrease. But beyond that, their allocations stayed the same. In regards to the CIP program, again, I guess we nailed it on the head when we presented the first time round. Our CIP is the list of our capital projects that are outside of our normal operation. And we presented to you a 2-year implementation schedule that would identify the projects and their potential funding sources that we are hoping to, we are anticipating commencing in the next 2 years. And the list you see before you is what was proposed for the 21-22 capital improvement program. Again, this has not changed since we made our first presentation with you. We still feel that from the feedback that we've gotten, that this is what we're going to be good to go with. These are the anticipated funding sources. And again, the nice thing about a budget is that it can always be changed. It's fluid. It can be modified. So if there are funding sources that don't come to fruition or new plans that come into play, we can always take another look and see about revising. Next one. And then this is the plan or the projects that are anticipated for fiscal year 23. So tonight, one of the first things I want to do as I jump into this items for consideration is point out that unfortunately we did have an oversight of a number as we were putting the budget together that was not caught until after we had proposed or put the budget before council. So almost immediately, we're requesting an amendment to our budget. So what we are putting in for consideration is we need to, first of all, amend Resolution 2021-30 to authorize the Finance Director to amend account number 101-3030-423-1101 in the fiscal year 21-22 portion of the budget to increase that budget by $36,900 for an unfunded accrued liability payment to CalPERS for a total of $133,450 for that budget line. And then we are asking for adoption of Resolution 2021-30, which is for the approval of the fiscal year 22-23 municipal budget and capital improvement program, and the approval of the appropriations limit for the city of Imperial Beach. So basically at this point, council can adopt the resolution as amended. You can direct staff to modify and adopt the resolution as modified, or you can direct staff to provide additional information at the June 2nd meeting. That is my presentation, and if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you so much again. Excellent presentation. Really appreciate it. I'll be using this as a model for other boards that I sit on. Seriously, I really appreciate all the work the staff has put into making really clear presentations. And as I explained, not for the staff's purposes, but for informing the public and our council about what we're actually talking about and working through. So with that, I know we have public comment, and I also want to thank, I know there's been a lot of robust discussion and public workshops, and I know I've heard from lots of folks, more than I heard on any other issue this year, which is really great. I think there's been a lot of robust discussion and engagement in this, which is really, really positive, and we appreciate that. And hopefully it's the last time we'll do it virtually. But I know I had lots of discussions with people, and so that's a good sign, right? That, we've had lots of discussions. So thank you, everyone, so much for that. So with that, we will start. I don't know if I've declared the public hearing open yet, but I'll do it again. Public hearing open, and we will go to public comments.
This is City Clerk Kelly. I will begin with the public participating via Zoom. Please use the raise hand feature if you would like to speak on this item. There are no raised hands, so I will proceed with the written comments. The first 4 messages are similar in nature and substantially the same. And they come from Aaron Ralston, Sandra Brillhart, Mary Stone, and Carol Tenenbaum. And the message says, "Dear Mayor and Council members, Imperial Beach is a food desert, and our residents have unequal access to healthy, fresh, and locally grown food. Currently, 73% of our community shops for groceries outside of Imperial Beach. By partnering with Suncoast Market Co-op to open a community-owned and governed grocery store, the city can help transform IB into a good food hub with a focus on wellness, sustainability, and resident leadership. In addition, Suncoast Market Co-op can play an important role in helping our community recover from the pandemic and thrive. It will cost an estimated $3 million to open Suncoast, but the store will generate $7 million annually for the local economy and create 40 new jobs. Our community needs to work together to make this important project a budget through low-cost loans, tax credits, or other strategies. A commitment from the city could also help generate financial support from the county, state, nonprofit organizations, and additional donors. It is important to note that a food co-op is not a typical business and does not exist to make a profit. The purpose of the food co-op is to meet a community need and serve the community. Profits do not go to a sole proprietor or a corporate office. They are reinvested in our community. Suncoast will grow our economy, promote health and wellness, and build community. Please support this important effort. Thank you for your consideration. And again, 4 messages were from Aaron Ralston, Sandra Brillhart, Mary Stone, and Carol Tenenbaum. The next message is from Laura Studebaker, and she says, "Hello all," and she's a resident. "I am sure you have heard all the reasons, but I too would like to request that the city include funding in its budget that is supportive of opening Suncoast. Many people have been working very hard to get this going and would be a wonderful addition to our great community. I would also like to express my opposition to any expansion of the skate park. I live fairly close to it, and I love that we have a skate park, but there seem to be so many problems over there. Instead of expanding, perhaps any money for an expansion would be better spent on security for the existing park or improvements to other areas that would benefit a wider range of activities for the non-skating kids, such as a tennis court, more basketball courts, or improvements to the Boys and Girls Club. Thank you for considering my email, Laura Studebaker." The next message is from Beverly Florence, an Imperial Beach resident and supporter of Suncoast Market. "Dear Mayor and Council members, I used to refer to Imperial Beach as a hidden gem. Today, it is simply a gem, no longer hidden. However, the city does not have a grocery store to call its own that provides healthy, fresh, and locally grown food and supports local small businesses. Suncoast Market Co-op will provide this and so much more. Jobs for locals, a store to shop, where we know the health and well-being of the community and citizens it serves will always be in the forefront. Suncoast Market in Imperial Beach stands with the cultural shift of healthy lifestyles, sustainability, and eco-friendly practices. Suncoast Market and grocery store co-ops alike in the communities it serves lifts its people, city, and economy up. Grocery store co-ops are held in high regard for the principles in which they follow, the ability to build relationships, and partnering in efforts the community and city benefit from. I am advocating that the City of Imperial Beach allow funding in support of the opening of Suncoast Market Grocery Store Co-op. Respectfully, Beverly Florence." The next message is from Mel Lyons, a resident of Imperial Beach. "Honorable city leaders, I'm writing today to urge that the City of Imperial Beach provide financial support to help open Suncoast Market Co-op. There's no place like IB, and I treasure living here. The small town neighborly vibe, its laid back demeanor, and of course, being able to live so close to the coast without having wealth make this a beach town like no other. My primary form of transportation is my bicycle. Rarely do I need to drive out of town for anything. The one exception is to buy healthy food. Over 40 years ago, I chose to eat healthy, mostly organic food as my primary means for personal health care, which has worked out well for my 65-year-old body. Because IB is a food desert, I have to drive to other cities to find the quality I seek. I'd much rather ride my bike to my local co-op and spend my money in Imperial Beach. I want to live in a healthy community, and I imagine you do too. And health begins with the food we eat. Not being able to buy healthy food in Imperial Beach is a serious blight, and I and others like me are working hard to address by opening Suncoast Market Co-op. Please consider supporting this important project, which is projected to bring millions of dollars in business while supporting 40 local jobs through low-cost loans, tax credits, or other strategies. Suncoast's grassroots solution-oriented community is sincere in our efforts to make this happen, which will not only support our community's health, but provide a boost to our city's economy as well. Let's keep money circulating locally instead of flowing outward to non-resident businesses. This makes sense to me, and I hope it does to you as well. Sincerely, Mel Lyons. The next message is from Sandra Billhart, a local resident. Our sheriffs do an excellent job, but I am concerned that the proposed increases in the sheriff's department's budget are unsustainable and not reflective of emerging best practices for addressing nonviolent incidents traditionally handled by police. I understand that rising personnel costs account for a large part of these increases, but I'm disappointed that the proposed budget appears to prioritize costly, often unnecessary, and potentially harmful police responses over community-based programs and partnerships that could, in many cases, provide more appropriate and lower-cost options for responding to problems without sacrificing public safety. Many of these options were discussed at the community outreach sessions conducted by the Ad Hoc Committee on Police Reform that was established last year, and I, like many of the participants, had hoped they would be reflected in future funding decisions. I appreciate that the budget includes funds for a parking study, which I hope will be limited to the Seacoast Drive area, where the lack of parking poses a threat to ratables that our city depends on. I am also very happy that the budget includes funding for a new recreation department. I appreciate the work that went into preparing the budget and the workshops that were held by city staff. Respectfully, Sandra Brillhart. The next message is from Colin Buell, a resident of Imperial Beach. Mayor, as we begin to reopen businesses and parks within our community, I have noticed a growing number of new residents, as well as those who have lived in Imperial Beach for as long as I have, and some even longer, beginning to fill the streets and more specifically the skate park. While I have been a resident of Imperial Beach, the skate park has been a place where I spend a majority of my free time as a place to unwind and enjoy the outdoors, as well as a place to bring my daughter to teach her new skills. However, until recently, with the increased number of skateboarders that are frequenting the skate park, it has no longer become a place where I am able to enjoy myself to bring my 6-year-old daughter, since it is now overcrowded and at times too dangerous for the beginner skateboarders to learn. This limited amount of area causes the skateboarders to find skate park obstacles to take a seat and place their belongings on, since there is no other form of seating area, which in turn then limits the already shortened amount of space for those to actually perform any type of skateboarding at all. When thinking back to 2019's City Council Board budget meeting, which had promised a skate park improvement plan of $700,000, I was immediately excited for the news and couldn't wait for the updated design that was shown to those who had attended the design meetings to be implemented. With the pandemic taking place and plans being put on hold, it was understandable that nothing was being done at the time. But I think that now, with the way the community is reopening, it would be greatly appreciated if there could be a jump start to the already proposed improvements to the skate park. As a concerned parent and resident of IB, taking any steps toward taking any step towards this previously proposed plan, even if it were as simple as providing a set of bleachers for seating and a canopy for shade. I feel that these actions or any other minor action taken towards improvement could give the members of the community a restored trust in our city council to begin moving forward with a sense of progress towards the overall goal of a skate park improvement plan. Thank you for your time, Colin Beal. The next message is from Steve Gibbons, and he says, Serge, I was just wondering and hoping a pickleball and or tennis courts could be added somewhere in IB when the creation of the Parks and Recreation Department made. Lots of open grass area near the skate park, ? I know funds would be needed, but we are lacking in this area of activity. Thank you, Steve. The next message is from former council member Lori Bragg, and she says, Dear Mayor Dedina, thank you for your continued pursuit of recreational opportunities for the residents of Imperial Beach. I would encourage expanded programs and activities for all members of our community. However, with a renewed commitment to our seniors, a demographic deeply affected by the COVID pandemic. Again, thank you for your efforts over the years. Sincerely, Lori Bragg. The next message is from Mary Stone. And she says, Dear Mayor and Council members, I am writing to respectfully request that the 2021-22 city budget does not allocate funds to the expansion of the skate park. As you know, the lack of oversight and security there has been an ongoing issue for years. What is allowed to go on at the skate park not only affects the neighborhood, but also anyone using the sports park. This includes IB Softball League, IB Little League, IB Calvary Church members, younger kids who use the playground, etc. Expanding the skate park benefits a very small segment of the population. A more equitable solution would be directing funds toward updating/improving the Boys and Girls Club programs and facility that many children and their families rely on. Employees at the Boys and Girls Club have had countless issues with teens at the skate park. They shouldn't have to deal with even more kids at a bigger facility without any help. That park is unmanageable as it is. It will be a nightmare. It will be if it's expanded without any security. Funds could be better used for maintaining, not destroying, the green space used for picnics and barbecues, improving the existing basketball court instead of removing it to make way for a bigger skate park, or for providing security in the existing park. Thank you, Mary Stone. The next message is from Mary Ann Schultz. And she says, Dear Mayor and Council members, as you are preparing the upcoming budget for Imperial Beach, it is important that the skate park is given an upgrade as far as security is concerned, not an expansion. There have been numerous incidents at the park that have necessitated the sheriff to intervene. The girls' softball leagues have been harassed and intimidated by certain users at the park. Blatant drug use, particularly after the skate park is closed, doesn't add to good atmosphere for this area. The Boys and Girls Club could be expanded and staffed with qualified people who are genuinely interested in the welfare of the kids in IB. That's where the emphasis could be placed, not on setting up another skate park with very little supervision. You cannot expect a young employee to deal with the problems that arise when you have kids that don't give and I won't say the word, what the rules are. It would not serve the community well to eliminate the basketball courts and the picnic areas in order to expand the skate park. Please consider these comments as you go forward with your agenda. Sincerely, Marianne Schultz. And the last written comment is from Nick, I believe, Hiampa. And he says, Hi, Mayor Dedina. Thanks for taking the time to have a conversation with me yesterday. I just wanted to follow up with an email. I emailed members of the school board yesterday to ask that they consider a joint use agreement with the city. I'd hope that they'd be trying to make some changes that the community could get behind, considering that many in the community are questioning the district's choice to not open campuses. But as of now, I have heard back from them. Funding of any agreement seems to have been a sticking point when this comment was brought up previously. So I don't know if that would be something that the city or even the port could contribute to. I didn't mention it, but I wonder if the district might be open to limited opening of campuses to organizations such as South Bay AYSO or IB Little League for practices to test potential impacts. I did want to follow up regarding the skate park. We talked briefly about the topic, but it seems that the city really does have an opportunity to create the type of skate park that could incorporate elements that would attract a basic entry-level skater, such as pump track, while also allowing for elements that would invite a lot of creativity that more expert skaters would be interested in. The park is pretty small and it is crowded often, so I think the lack of diversity of the features in the park is one factor in kids acting out. Another is that it's a place where the same people go, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of influence from other parts of the county because it's not a park that is interesting enough to pull people from other parts of the county. An expansion done correctly could get a wider level of people participating in our city, but also could incorporate elements that would attract people from outside IB as well. I'm curious whether any organizations or companies would get behind a project to expand the park, or what other creative avenues we could explore to create something that could benefit all. I'm curious if there are other creative ideas being explored to make the sports park the type of place that really attracts people. Would there be a potential for a bike track? If the school districts opened up fields so that Little League practices or games could be held on other parks, then could there be a potential to convert some of those fields within the sports park to include a more diverse array of sports? Sorry for the long email, but I feel strongly that there exists the opportunity to do some really unique, attractive things within the community to utilize better what little open space there is. Thanks again for your time and consideration. And that is from Nick Hiampa. And Mr. Mayor, we do have some oral comments, and I will go to those.
First, thank you very much, Council. City Clerk Kelly. Let's in the future let's figure out how to break those up so you're not the only one reading it.
Okay.
I'll read some of them. Yeah, we can all volunteer.
I'm a little tired.
I felt bad.
It's okay. I'll survive. But we do have an oral comment from 4 people so far. The first person is Lauren Gaw. And Lauren, please unmute yourself and begin. You have 3 minutes. Lauren Gaw. Okay, I will go to...
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. You have 3 minutes. Please begin. Lauren? Lauren, we're having trouble hearing you. I will go to the next speaker, and we'll come back to you. The next speaker is Paul Lasso. Mr. Lasso, please unmute yourself and begin. Oh, here we go. Oh, sorry. Mr. Lasso, can you please begin again? I'm sorry, we couldn't hear you.
Okay, so it seems like I can be heard on Zoom, so I'm just going to go ahead and go. First off, I support the Sunrise Co-op's comments before. Definitely IB deserves better than having a food desert, and for sure the co-op model definitely tends to expand democracy and bring it to the private sector. It's definitely a great tradition to expand. It's great to see lots of the things that are added to the budget, especially the increased spending on Parks and Rec. But I am concerned because I want to remind the City Council that there were budget issues that we're trying to get solved before, and maybe those have been alleviated by ARPA funds. But specifically, we need to discuss the fact that the Sheriff's Department costs have been rising faster than revenues. And that was an ongoing issue before, and it's not going to be solved by one-time funding. In the future, either that means that we're going to have to cut again to other areas of the budget. So I saw that we are increasing the fire department to have a 12th firefighter. Fantastic. Let's not forget that the city had to cut that position before to accommodate the increased spending on the sheriff's budget. The other option, of course, as you all know, is tax increases. And as you all also just know, we did just pass a 1% increase to bolster funding to go to essential services like that. Between budget cuts and tax increases, there has to be another way to solve the budgetary issue. And we had talked about possibly exploring other means of public safety, which is exactly what was recommended by the ad hoc committee to continue that exploration. Now, it seems like we have an extra 2 years, because it looks like if you guys have the funding to cover that for the next 2 years, then this next 2 years would be a great time to spend really looking at other ways that we can achieve the goals of public safety that we want, especially as crimes have been decreasing. So it seems like we'd be spending more money every single year on the sheriff's department, even though they're actually solving, or quote unquote, solving fewer crimes, which would not be the most, it wouldn't be the best way to spend public money, I would believe. And on top of that is that we did just spend $10,000 on creating this ad hoc committee and to take the recommendations. And if we're not taking those recommendations seriously and considering alternatives to how we're approaching public safety, that's a wasted $10,000. That's a wasted time of not just your also council members, but members of the community who seriously engage in that process. So I'd be really curious to see how we're moving forward with that within those next 2 years that we seem to have bought ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we will go back to Ms. Gaw. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Ms. Gaw, please.
I just want to ask, when people call in, to please let us know if they're an Imperial Beach resident or not. And I say that because the newspaper got someone wrong who wasn't a resident and they identified themselves as a resident. So thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hello, my name is Lauren. I am an Imperial Beach resident and have been for some years now. I'm calling because I'm very concerned about the bloated sheriff's budget. And I think that we need to work on decreasing it now, not in 2 years. The community needs to know that if we want to have things like parks and recreations and nice things like a grocery store, that money needs to come from somewhere. And the sheriff is taking up so much of the money right now in our town that we don't have money for anything else. And I'm fed up about it. I'm really also fed up about the racism in this town. It is just so disgusting for me that we live in such a fascist town. And I really want it to be a more friendly place for LGBTQ people, for Black lives. And I want this town to stand up for fighting for Black lives. I think anything less is fascism, and it is disgusting. I really would like the city council to take the suggestions of the ad hoc committee, because they were well informed and actually can provide some change. If you can't make any meaningful change, then you are not worth any, you're not worth it. And then it makes me really sad that you can't do your job and that you'll be voted out. If you're not for the people, then I don't know who you're for. We really would like an anti-racist Imperial Beach. And if that's not possible, then I think your dream of America's best, hidden gem of a beach city is trash, because it's not a nice place for people of Black and brown colors to live here. And I think IB can do better. We need to defund the police, and Serge, you need to do your job as well as all the other community members. This town could be really great, but right now it's not living up to any kind of expectation that I want to be proud to live here, but I really don't. We've had just countless racist interactions with community members, and I think the city council should have a better example of how this town could be. It's disappointing. Thank you.
The next speaker is Eric Syverson. Please unmute yourself and begin. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Eric Syverson. Apparently being a resident matters, so I'll use my California identification card, 1311 Connecticut Street, resident of Imperial Beach, California, 91932. The part of community policing that no one talked about is the community. What do they do? What is their response to keeping the place safe? What is their responsibility? I'm tired of being called racist. I'm tired of being called poor, polluted, poisoned, looked down on. I've been doing it for 50 years. There's a former council member named Mark West who was voted out because of his stand to defund the police and his stand with Black Lives Matter. Voted out. We can continue this vote. I will tell you the responsibility of the community is to do what I do. When I find some of the most repugnant, racist graffiti in town, I privately call Andy Hall and I ask him to remove it. And I have done it many times because I have always fought for Imperial Beach. Always. Crime is up everywhere. Violent crime is up everywhere. The predators are preying right now. The average people will not follow your laws. If you defund anything, I just can't believe somebody came on and called us racist. It makes me goddamn cry. It really does. Ask Andy Hall what we've done for this place. Ask him. And we had a co-op. It was called Seacoast Foods. We had tennis courts, racquetball courts, squash courts, a functioning recreation department, a functioning pier, a functioning sports bar. This is absolutely insane that you people have dragged this community through this. Absolutely insane, and it's why people are moving out in droves. This is ridiculous. You'll stand in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, but it takes you 5 damn years to form a recreation department. 5 years. And for the record, it's the white Aryan resistance is the graffiti that I've asked repeatedly to be removed. Repeatedly. And I'm saying this now because I had a Jewish friend that asked me not to keep this private. This makes me sick to my damn stomach. This is one of the greatest towns that has always been looked down upon by everyone. And I'm tired of outsiders coming in telling us we haven't done our part. We do more than our share. We always have and we always will. And to have the blatant attacks on people who have lived here forever, you should be ashamed. Ashamed. Thank you.
The next speaker is Indigo Curtis. Indigo, you have 3 minutes. Please begin.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. I'd like to echo the call for our city to follow through with the time and money many of us invested in last summer's law enforcement ad hoc committee. Defunding their bloated and ever-increasing budget is what will make our community safer. I appreciate that you are acknowledging the importance of a city recreation department. I 100% believe that's extremely important for our city as well. However, we do need to balance the funding of our community resources with decreased police funding and decreased police presence. I appreciate wanting to bring art and music into our city. However, these gestures are meaningless if they come before and if they are not backed with following through and creating policies that lead to less police in our neighborhoods. Maybe you've heard before, no justice, no peace. No peace without justice. Mayor Dedina, you tweeted last summer that there is a legacy of white supremacy in Imperial Beach that needs to be dealt with. The previous caller obviously was very passionate about his comments, and if he, I'm horrified to hear that there is frequently even more white supremacist graffiti or whatever he's talking about happening in this town than I even was aware of. So there you go. He said it. I don't understand his comments. He's saying that he's obviously extremely upset. He's being called a racist, yet he wants to somehow wipe out racism in IB by erasing white supremacist graffiti. That just confused me. Yeah, let's erase every trace of white supremacy in this community. I agree. Stomp out racism. Anyway, Mayor Dedina, when are you going to actually have that conversation? One tweet is not enough. We know the crime rate continues to drop. Despite what the previous caller said about it, violent crime going up everywhere, that's absolutely not the case in our community. It is the opposite. That is absolutely untrue. The crime rate has been dropping while police funding bankrupts every other resource that our community members, residents, and youth actually need. Strong communities do make the police obsolete. Yeah, erase the white supremacy. That guy's doing it. At the same time, he doesn't want to have a conversation about racism. I guess nobody does. But guess what? It needs to happen. Imperial Beach is a strong community. Strong communities can make police obsolete, and it will be a safe, good place. If the police become obsolete, it means that we don't need them and we don't have to pay for them because the blue is in the red as far as the budget. So stop funding a police force that independent studies have shown, both SD sheriffs and SDPD, they're some of the most biased, racist
Ms.
police
Curtis, your
forces
time is up.
Safest communities have the best
Your time is
resources,
up,
not the most
Ms.
police.
Curtis. Thank you. Are there any other public speakers that wish to speak? We have Brian Kitchens. You have 3 minutes. Please unmute yourself and begin.
I am with Eric Syverson. I went to school with Eric Syverson. His family's been a pillar of the community for as long as I can remember. Why don't we go back to the way it used to be and bring back the IB Police Department? Get rid of the Sheriff's Department and keep it small town. Hire within your town. Police with your community members, not with people outside of the town. That's all I've got to say. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, that's the final oral comment, and we have no further written comments.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for calling in and all the comments, and more importantly, all the public workshops, all the discussion, all the engaged organizations. Really nice to see that, and so much passion and commitment to providing feedback on the budget and creating a better Imperial Beach. So appreciate that, and I want to thank again the staff for organizing so much public feedback and comments and workshops to make that happen. With that, I'd like to close the public comment period, and we can go to council discussion. We can start with Councilmember Fisher.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo your sentiments about the city staff, the engagement from the community. It's absolutely wonderful to see, and obviously a lot of passion, a lot of well thought out comments coming to us tonight, and I think even with the workshop as well. I attended a couple of them, and we did have some great input. And you know, it's always a difficult thing. We talk about budgets; you can't afford everything. We know this on a personal level, and the same thing happens in the community as well. So. You know, the one thing a couple comments I want to make is I'm so happy to see a staff that's focused on long-term financial security. You know, when we as a city are in a good financial position, then we're able to help others, and those others are the community. And we've seen some great things happening in the past 6 months. Measure I passing is fantastic. For me, the highlights of Measure I passing, you know, were presented by Ms. Cortez, and you know, the 3 things I want to talk about is the Parks and Recreation Committee being created, Community Response Team, Marine Park and Safety Program, and then obviously adding the 12th firefighter. You know, this is a product of what the residents have talked about us wanting to have, and I think we're going to deliver. We're going to deliver on those promises of what this Measure I was. And I think that as we go through the next year, and it's already started for the last month and a half, I believe, I don't think I've seen too many people draining out their bank accounts because a little bit added. But what it's going to do in the long term, it's going to help those who previously haven't had the ability to, you know, be protected in different areas. Our parks being a little bit safer. Obviously, you know, the concerns about the skate park, I think we'll see an improvement there. But, you know, this is what happens when you have a community who reaches out. You have a staff who truly cares about the long-term security of the city and the residents. And again, the listening part is huge for me. I think that as we see the next financial year come about us, I think we'll see a lot of improvements. So I'm looking forward to that. Thanks to all the city staff. Thanks to Joanne for her hard work and the first time through with the budget. Not easy, but and behind the scenes, she answers amazing amounts of questions for myself. I'm sure with the rest of the members of the city council. So thanks for that. And really thanks for everybody just participating. And, the best is really before us. It always is. And, we say that as some type of encouragement. This time I say it from a heartfelt point that's truthful, that we're really going in the right direction. And that wouldn't have happened without great staff and also the community members rallying around and passing Measure I. So thank you very much for all that you've done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fisher. Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am considering we've been in the COVID situation and everything has been remote. We have had a really, really good amount of community input into the budget, and a lot of people very interested in the budget as a whole and the some specific items on the budget. So I commend everybody who has weighed in with public comment on this item. I think we've had more public comment this time around on this budget than we've had on prior budgets. And that is really, a good thing. And I appreciate all the comments that have been made. I also want to thank our community for supporting the city's long-term financial health with regard to Measure I and the approval of Measure I. We have a community that really is committed to this town and to its viability going forward. And, that's very obvious from the behavior of our voters and from the participation of people in the budget process. So this is all really very gratifying and makes me feel very positive. I had just a couple specific comments on the budget itself. I really have to thank our staff, Joanne Gitmed and all of her staff for doing an outstanding job. And the budget has never been presented in more clear and concise a manner in my decade on the city council than this time around. So, Joanne, you've really done it. Your staff has done it. And the city manager and assistant city manager, of course, who've overseen the process and the improvements that have been made in the process. I look forward to the time when we can go back to our public meetings in the park. Hopefully at least a couple times a year, where the public can come out and talk to our different departments, see what their funding is, see what their programs are, ask questions, and really have the kind of transparency and community engagement that a small, closely knit community like ours really should have and deserves. Ms. Gitmead made a couple comments about the additional funding that we have received and that we're expecting. Some of it is uncertain. I really appreciate her explanation about that uncertainty and the fact that we are going to have to sort of wait and see before we can count all those revenues that are anticipated under the ARPA Act. There are some one-time funds that are in the budget that she mentioned, and I think it's really important that we all understand what is meant by one-time funds as opposed to general revenue funds that come in every year, like, for example, from Measure I, and other sources of recurring funding in the general fund budget, and some of the other budgets as well, such as the enterprise fund for the sewer enterprise fund. These funds come in every year from the public. So when we get one-time monies, and she emphasized this, but I want to reemphasize it. We can't make the same mistake that the state of California makes when it gets a one-time surplus, say from a bumper year of tax revenues from capital gains or something like that. And all the legislators want to jump in and propose bills to spend that money. And very often it's spent on things like school budgets that are every year you have to fund them. And if you only have one-time money, guess what happens when those funds run out? Teachers get laid off, and the public and the public suffers. So we are being guided, I think, by excellent staff that say we should not be using those funds, those one-time funds, for anything other than one-time purposes, and that would include things like facilities and repairs and maintenance and that sort of thing, where it's one and done. I also think that the public safety area is, and I've said this many times over the years, is a continuing challenge. Yes, we have bought ourselves some time with Measure I. We have a 2-year budget that can accommodate the increases, which are nearly $500,000 in the sheriff's contract over that time period. We will have to come back to this. We do have some time to examine what we're going to do before we reach the day of reckoning, where we have to reduce other services and have to make the tough choices between essential communities, one kind of essential community service and another kind of essential community service. We will have to do that. We are going to allocate funds for a recreation department. This is going to benefit all of the people of Imperial Beach. It's going to improve, I think, the crime situation, because people of all ages in Imperial Beach will have recreational programs that will be beneficial to their mental and physical well-being, and that will be a very good thing, and that's what our community deserves. So I'm very pleased about us moving forward in that direction. But we aren't going to be able to have everything, and a recreation department is going to have staffing, it's going to have programs. Those are recurring costs. We'll have to meet those costs every year, just like we meet sheriff's costs and city staffing costs and other costs. And we're going to have to be able to project the revenue going forward that's going to address those costs, all of which will be escalating with inflation over time. So one of the things that I have been talking with Joanne Gitmead about is that we really do need a longer term budget or forecasting process that looks down the road with our high beams on instead of our regular lights. We're looking at a 2-year budget right now. We're faced with approving it, and I think it's a good budget, and I certainly want to approve it. But what about 5 years from now? And when we project our costs going forward, and then we have to project what kinds of revenues we're going to need to cover those costs, and where are we going to get those revenues from, and what is our strategy for generating those revenues. This is something we also need to do as responsible leaders in our communities, so that we have a viable city going forward for many years. And so I would urge, once we're finished with this year's budget process, that we have a conversation, perhaps a workshop, to look at longer term challenges. The economy is not going to stay in a boom situation. We know this from decade after decade. We go into recessions, followed by another boom, et cetera. And when those recessions take place, and we had a good example of that with COVID, city revenues go down. And we need to project what happens when that takes place with respect to our fixed expenditures, et cetera. So I'm just saying, from the standpoint of budget, there's the 2-year budget, but there's also the longer term picture. And we need to, I think, as a city council and staff and community, have some sense of where we're going down the road, like I said, 5 years plus or minus, from now. And that may require some strategic thinking about what our revenue sources are, whether we want to do more things to promote tourism and ecotourism, which generates employment and revenues and tax dollars, et cetera. and do that in a conscious way rather than relying on the free market and chance. Finally, I think that the capital budget is going to warrant probably a little bit more attention going forward, depending on how some of these costs actually materialize. I think, for example, that the community enhancement project, $150,000 for community enhancement, which is essentially the Seacoast commercial area, will eventually need to be revisited. This is our cash cow in the community. This is where our community goes. This is where visitors come and spend their money. This is where people have a good experience. If they have a good experience, they're going to come back to Imperial Beach and spend their money again. We need to make sure that we're looking at this area strategically, just like any community that has the blessing of a waterfront. We'll have to look at that that area and make sure that they are benefiting, that their own community and that their revenues, et cetera, benefit to the maximum extent from the recreational and other opportunities that such valuable areas present. And I don't think that we are, I think we're selling ourselves short by looking at only $150,000 worth of enhancements in that area. We also need to bring the port into that discussion because I'm not so sure that we are getting the most out of the port, which owns a good deal of that property. And so that should be part of our discussion, looking at looking down the road, long-term, et cetera. So those are my basic comments on the budget. I think it's very clear. I don't think there are any areas that I would take issue with in the budget. Joanne has done a very good job, I think, of explaining everything. And again, appreciation to the staff and to the community for their participation.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs. Appreciate it. And now, Councilmember Aguirre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to commend staff for all of their work. I don't know of any other city that has used their lunch breaks to go distribute flyers to advertise the community budget workshops that we hosted. So I commend staff for all of their investment and their time doing that, really engaging our community and all of the work that went into balancing the budget. I also want to thank the community of Imperial Beach for all of their input. I know many of us on the council have received many suggestions, many comments via email, via phone calls. I believe it was over 12 hours of community input just between all the different workshops that were hosted. So I want to thank our community for their engagement, even tonight, for coming and giving comment on this really important matter. I just want to have a couple comments. I'm pleased that we're creating a Parks and Recreation program. I think recreation plays a pivotal and key role in the quality of life of all of our residents, especially for youth and seniors. As we move forward, there's a few things that I would like for us to look closer at and explore that are very important within our community. One is the issue of homelessness, and another is an issue of housing. I know regarding the ARPA funding, there is the $250,000 that will be available for vulnerable populations. So as the specifics of that funding and how it can be expended and utilized and allocated becomes available, I would encourage staff to continue exploring that and figure out how we can address homelessness and how we can engage the community on that issue. That is something that I think is really important to hear where the community stands, despite the fact that we have regional efforts like the Regional Task Force on Homelessness, and the county department has launched all of their programs. I would hate for us to just stand by with our arms crossed and not really meet the moment in a bold way. And especially as we have this unique opportunity for federal funding to address this issue. I would like for us to do that in a very engaged way, engaging the community so that we can hear their input as well. Secondly, I would also like for us to explore how we can expand our housing program specialists from part-time to full-time. As I mentioned during our last council meeting, when I reported on the moratorium that was passed at the county level, one of the items that was thoroughly discussed and presented at the county was the need for resources for counseling and assistance. How can residents navigate all of the housing programs, all of the housing funding that's out there, rent relief, legal services? Legal Aid Society of San Diego is completely overwhelmed. We have someone in-house that could really help. He has been doing an amazing job. I want us to look at how we can expand his position to a full-time position. And lastly, I want to echo Councilmember Sprague's comments regarding our sheriff's contract. We have bought ourselves some time with Measure I, but as we enter renegotiations of that contract, I would welcome the opportunity for us to come back to the council with the full report that, as someone in the audience mentioned tonight, spend a lot of time and effort to put together those recommendations. I would welcome a discussion so that we can thoroughly visit each recommendation and see how we can implement or not those recommendations. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Leiva Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Once again, I have to ride the coattails of my colleagues on the city council. They touched on so many of different areas that were very important and influential. One of the things I definitely want to comment on is the effort by the city staff. Joanne doing such a phenomenal job on the budget, in addition to getting the word out in District 4 and passing out door hangers along with Erica and Andy Hall to get the word out. Nowhere else can you see such a great work ethic and individuals that are just so committed to doing the job and accomplishing what needs to be done. It makes me proud to be involved with such a great crew of individuals that are able to get the job done. I just want to comment because I attended a couple of the workshops, and it's just great, and it's motivating, and it's empowering to see so many residents that are so proactive in the process in giving their feedback. For example, look at tonight, all of the comments. There's individuals there that are full of compassion. There's a number of different reasons that individuals, want to voice their opinion, but that's what makes this country great. Participating and voicing your opinion so that everyone can be heard. And that's what's really important. And I'm very proud that so many individuals participated tonight. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for all those comments. And I do appreciate all the feedback. And I just want to highlight one comment in particular. I really appreciated Nick Ciampa for thinking outside the box. I think one of the issues when we talk about budgets and then even parks and recreation and our use of our recreational resources in city spaces, how do you balance all these needs and competing interests? And, the name of the game in Parks and Rec, for example, is multiple use, right? How do you balance multiple uses in any open space or public space? Since that's always a challenge. We haven't looked outside the box in the past, or we have tried, but for example, the old school board wasn't really interested in having that discussion. I think there's an opportunity now to recognize that our children who are in school then get out of school, especially on the north side of town, for example, and don't have any park access, right? And so I think we have public space that's fenced in throughout the city that we could work with our school district on looking at getting state grants, et cetera, to have these multiple use sort of recreational areas that could serve as community parks after school is out. Because what we can't do is continue to have the situation in which our kids, 30% of who live in poverty, don't have access to park resources that they do in every other city in the county. So I'm really excited about those types of discussions. I am excited about the fact that we've made a commitment to looking at alternatives to our sheriff, investing in Parks and Rec, and investing in this park ranger idea, so that we're not calling sheriffs on folks who are homeless or when teenage skateboarders get in a fight. And then more importantly, I'm buoyed by what the county has talked about in terms of providing funding and support and services. They have some sort of team to address homeless folks and folks with mental health challenges. So I think that's all going in the right direction. So thanks, everybody. The name of the game is, I think all of us are raised in IB, never got anything we wanted, ever. No one ever got anything we wanted. And you always had to compromise, and that's the American way. And I'm grateful to everybody who's compromised and understands that we have to figure this out and do what's best for IB. And more importantly, I think an historic opportunity to make our city better, right? I mean, we're not fighting over cutting the budget. We're fighting over historic additions to the budget and investment in public services, which is, I think, for me, really, really moving and inspiring, and really happy about that. So thanks to everybody. Thanks for all the engagement. And anyway, we look forward to getting this to work. I'm assuming we don't have any additional public comments. Is that correct? I closed the public comment period.
Correct, Mr. Mayor. No,
Okay,
no additional
that's fine.
comments.
So I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'd like to make sure that's very complicated, but I have in front of me what to read. I would like to entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2021-30 as amended, as indicated by staff, approving the FY22 and FY23 municipal budget and setting the GAN limit. Is there a motion?
Motion by Fisher.
Is there a second?
Sprague.
Great. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And City Clerk Kelly, you want to take a roll call vote?
This is City Clerk Kelly. I will take a roll call vote. There has been a motion by Fisher, second by Spriggs, to adopt resolution number 2021-30 as amended. Councilmember Aguirre, how do you vote?
Aguirre, aye.
Councilmember Leyva Gonzalez, how do you vote?
Leyva Gonzalez, aye.
Councilmember Fisher, how do you vote?
Fisher, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs, how do you vote?
Briggs, aye.
And Mayor Dedina, how do you vote?
Dedina, aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thanks again, everybody. Congratulations to our city staff. Well, a lot of work. Well done. Thank you very much. And thanks to all the public again and our city council colleagues. Great job. Very complicated and great job. And now we have item number 2, resolution number 2021-29, authorizing an amendment to the Community Development Block Grant CARES Act application. And I am hitting the gavel on the sounding block. It's not my coffee cup this time like it was when we were all virtual. And declare the public hearing open. Community Development Director Fultz will give the report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is the CDBG CV amendment project. And what that means is Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus. And this was a grant that provides funds to cities to respond to the existential issue of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we took this project before council in October with a request about how to use these funds. And the funds that we were allotted was about $240,000. It was intended to serve low to moderate income populations, seniors, or provide ADA access. And also on the right, you see that it was intended to provide a response to infectious diseases. So what we had applied for was improvements to City Hall and the community room to provide touchless equipment, distancing measures, safety measures for those who would come into the council chambers or the community room, touchless restrooms, and things along those lines. Following our application, the CDBG administrators met with HUD, and they felt that we would need to prove that 51% of the people using the community room and the city council chambers and City Hall would be low to moderate income. We weren't able to provide those findings. We haven't had anybody visit these buildings in quite some time. So we asked if we could modify the application to provide improvements to Sports Park, which is providing, it still is, providing testing for COVID-19, and then also to the community room, which was providing vaccines. The CDBG staff met with HUD again, and HUD is the body that provides the funds to the county, which then distributes to the cities. And they, again, felt that we would need to prove that at least 51% of the people using those facilities, so those getting tested or vaccinated, were low to moderate income, which, again, is something that we were not able to provide information on because the city was not administering those programs and we're not able to collect that data and provide it to the county. So we met with CDBG staff again. This was last week, last week or week before, and they mentioned that HUD provided some additional criteria that would maybe assist us in using those funds, and it opened up the opportunity to make improvements to senior facilities. So what we're proposing to do is use those funds to modify the existing senior center to provide appropriate distancing and other measures, equipment, furniture, et cetera, that would help make the building more resilient to COVID-19 or other diseases. In addition to that, the staff is proposing to use a portion of Veterans Park to provide some outdoor fitness geared towards seniors. And here you see a picture of some of those fitness equipment. It's low-impact activities, and it would provide some roofing, and you could see some of the equipment right now. And these are all geared towards seniors to increase outdoor uses and social exercises, but of course in an outdoor setting. Once we looked at that proposal, we were considering, well, where are the possible locations for this equipment? And here on the screen, you can see a couple locations that we were considering. They're not as highly trafficked as some of the other areas within Veterans Park. The central area is used for soccer or other activities. Obviously, we have the library, and then we have the existing senior center. And not only that, but there's a proposal, and here on the left-hand side, we have plans that are approved and ready for construction once we find the funding for a new senior community center. And because of that, we had to propose a location a little bit further away from the existing building, which would allow for a walk over to the locations. In addition to that, we looked to the north end, but there's also a proposal for a splash pad, more accessible playground area. So that's why these two locations were highlighted by staff. Not only that, but it also provides a close proximity to St. James. And our public works staff looked at it a little bit closer over the last week, and they felt that the location closest to St. James and the restroom would be an optimal location out of those two, and this plan just shows what the path of travel would be. And the staff did look at maybe some nearby facilities that provided somewhat similar layout. And this is an example in Spring Valley County Park where they have an existing senior center. And within the park there, you can see there's a child's playground. There's a large grass area. But in addition to that, these little red circles are areas where they have those low-impact senior type of activities. So we've seen it other areas in the county where it's been used before, and it's fairly successful. And with that concludes staff's report. So we're requesting that the City Council amend the CDBG CV application to provide improvements to the senior center and also to provide an outdoor fitness area geared towards seniors within Veterans Park.
Thank you so much, Community Development Director Fultz. City Clerk Kelly, do we have any public comments?
Mr. Mayor, I will begin with people participating via Zoom. For those participating via Zoom, please use the raise hand feature if you would like to speak. There are no raised hands and no written comments.
Thank you so much. We can start this council discussion with Councilmember Leben Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. That design is, with the exercise equipment, looks really enticing. Hopefully, it's not just isolated to seniors, because I could definitely hit that and use it as well. So, great job, Tyler. Thank you for all you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Leben Gonzalez. Maybe we can use your new lifted golf cart with the great tires to cart people around that park, and then you can work out with them. No, thank you very much. Councilmember Geary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support that idea. I absolutely support this item. It's unfortunate that the requirements continue to become ever so more stringent because we are a workforce community that is moderate to low income. So I don't understand how we aren't qualifying easier. But I think that Director Foltz has done a fantastic job in finding this alternative, because the more services and free recreational opportunities that we can bring our senior community, the better. And what better way to keep them active and healthy. I do have a question for Director Foltz. Did you make that rendering right there?
The drawing?
Mm-hmm.
No, our public works staff prepared that.
Oh, it's wonderful. I just want to say, like, artistic skills off the chart. So great job.
It is Public Works Week.
What's that?
It is Public Works Week. They're very good.
That's true. That is true. We're celebrating you all. Okay. Well, I am absolutely 100% supportive of this item, and thank you all for your work on this.
Thank you so much. Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think it's great, and I have two sort of questions or concerns beyond the fact that, I have to commend Tyler and the city staff for coming up with this alternative. I can't think of anything that would be more beneficial to senior citizens, and I'm becoming one myself. And one of the biggest challenges is appropriate exercise opportunities, and to try to maintain the one thing that seniors suffer from, that's natural part of aging, which is loss of muscle mass. And to be able to have this kind of equipment available is good for mental and physical health. And I think it's just a great idea to do this. My concerns are twofold. One is I'm worried about Matthew and everybody else is sort of taking over this area, and the seniors being maybe too embarrassed they can't lift as much weight as Matthew and some of the other younger guys and women. So I think we need to think about some way to make this really a senior thing, and locating it away from the senior center will make it more difficult for that to be the case, it seems to me. Secondly, locating it away from the senior center itself, which is kind of a walk. Maybe that golf cart will be needed to get people from the senior center to these sites, one or the other of them, wherever it's. The challenge is, okay, you're at the senior center for a social gathering or this or that or the other, and you want to get some exercise as part of that visit. There's parking right there and everything. Maybe you're doing a card game. Maybe you're doing something else, and a group of folks want to, okay, let's go get some exercise. You can't really do it readily. It's a separate site and kind of a separate plan needed to take advantage of it than just a visit to the senior center. So I would, and I understand that there's a big project plan for that whenever. But for right now, this equipment is going to be coming in, and I just think it'd be helpful if we could find a way to incorporate it into where the seniors are right now, as opposed to creating another site that they would have to go to in order to take advantage of the exercise. Finally, one of the problems with exercise is convenience. If you got to go 10 miles to the nearest gym, you're probably not going to do it as often as if it's right near you. And if you've got to walk a distance or drive to another location, it just creates another challenge to getting the necessary exercise. And we all know that, it's too easy to find excuses not to exercise. And I just want to really make this as beneficial as possible to our seniors. Thanks a lot. And Tyler, you may have some comments on that. I'm sure this is something you guys may have thought about, but I really think putting this all on one site with the senior center where other social activities take place would have a greater payoff in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs. Councilmember Fisher.
Yeah, no, I'm constantly amazed on how quickly city staff is able to navigate through situations that seem like roadblocks. The nimbleness in which Tyler and his team kind of work through things is just absolutely amazing to me consistently. And so I think this is a great project. I think it's a great use of the funds. I have a spry spring chicken friend who lives at the St. James Plaza. He's 81 years old. I don't think he knows that, but he would be totally down for using this type of equipment. And so, again, I think it's fantastic. We're thinking about our seniors. We just made a big discussion. We're thinking about our youth. We're talking about everybody in our city to help meet the needs. And, as I look at these slides, I envision, a bunch of older people out there enjoying themselves in the sun and working out and having a place to be to gather, especially after going through the last 18 months. So I think this is just fantastic. And so thanks to Tyler and the rest of the city staff for really thinking outside the box and doing something fun and cool. And, as I look at the drawing from Public Works, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm sitting there thinking I'd walk straight across the grass to there. So then that 450 feet of travel, that'd probably be their warm up. But no, again, thanks to city staff for having a good way to use funds, and hopefully this gets passed and implemented before somebody changes their mind on how these funds can be used.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, city staff and our city council for the really great comments and all the great work in figuring this out. The seniors, our most respected, residents, are the elders of our community. And it's clear that now we're going to have a Parks and Rec department. I think, the old senior center activities, that's going to change, right? We're going to have a much more dynamic Parks and Rec program and senior center and senior activities. So I'm assuming that we'll have, classes and activities that it's organized. If my dad was still around, he would have been there nonstop. He'd have been hanging out all the time. But it's really great. And I do want to acknowledge someone, and that's former Councilmember Lori Bragg, who provided some really nice comments on the need for senior investment. And it was former Councilmember Bragg that I remember when we were putting up the pull-up bars, it said we need to make some stuff that's good for our seniors. So, Councilmember Bragg, if you're listening, we heard you. And hopefully you'll be able to be here for the inauguration when we do it, or cut the ribbon, because I think that'll be great. And then just finally, I was at a conference on ocean conservation in northern Chile, in a nice town, fishing and tourism town, and they had these all over the place. And I said, man, it'd be nice if they can do this in Chile. We can do that in Imperial Beach. So finally, we're going to be like Chile, a lesser developed country where they had this all over their beachfronts. So really excited about it, and can't wait to have a more engaged and active senior population, but every population, and especially in that park. With that, are there any additional public comments in case we missed any?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I did sort of pose comments, but also a question regarding the exclusive use issue and the convenience of location. That I'd kind of like to get something back from Mr. Foltz on those points.
Well, sure. Yeah, I mean.
I could
answer that.
One of the key things is it truly was a balancing act. First, finding out the right location at Veterans Park. Obviously, it needed to be in Veterans Park because that's where we have our senior facility, and we are planning ahead for the future, knowing that there are construction plans for a new facility. So we didn't want to provide the new equipment in a location that we'd have to remove it. That's actually one of the CDBG requirements, is that we have to maintain what we install for a certain amount of years. In addition, there's also a planned expansion for the playground. So then that's what we started looking at. Well, what would be the next best location? And the location shown on that we showed you today is kind of that middle ground where it would serve the senior center. It would also serve the seniors within St. James. So that was kind of how we walked through this process. And maybe it's not the perfect location, but it was that balancing act where we felt that it hit a lot of the boxes in order to implement a successful equipment area.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it would be just so much more accessible if it could be within the senior center, perhaps even fenced in, so that the senior have the exclusive access to it and can and it's right there. So I hope it gets utilized as envisioned by everybody on the council and the staff who worked on this. I hope it gets utilized to the extent that, we hope it will, but it's, I think there are some challenges there and I've tried to point them out. The point about having to jump through these hoops at the last minute because of county imposed CDBG restrictions, whereas this is federal money, it should be coming straight to us. The things the city had planned to use this money for, including improvements in the sports park, etc., and the gym, that they are saying, no, you can't do that. You've got to do something else. Even though those improvements were had a connection to COVID and community health, etc., it seems to me that that is serious overreaching by the county on something that's not even their money. This money is supposed to be going to the cities. So, Mr. Mayor, I would hope that there might be time for you to weigh in with the chair of the supervisors and try to get them to be a little bit more flexible on these funds. They should not be second guessing the cities to this extent of nitpicking on choices that we made that were well documented and well reasoned, and forcing us to go to alternative plans kind of at the last minute, which we're very good at, and we've done a great job on it, as this illustrates. But I just find that this ought to be raised to the political level, and I hope that you'll consider doing that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. That sounds like a great op-ed for you to write, Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs. But I actually agree. Point well taken, yeah. And definitely is something we can follow up on. And you're exactly right. It's not for the county to micromanage federal funding for investment in the community. So especially when they get a lot of tax dollars. Anyway, great. So I'm going to move on then and make sure am I closing the public hearing? No, I guess not. Closing public hearing, and I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 2021-29, authorizing an amendment to the Community Development Block Grant CARES Act application for improvements to the senior center and construction of an outdoor fitness area at Veterans Park, and execute an agreement with the county based on the final funding amount. Is there a motion?
Aguirre moves.
Is there a second?
Fisher second. Gonzalez second.
Oh.
This is City Clerk Kelly. I will now take an oral roll call vote. There has been a motion by Aguirre, second by Leyva Gonzalez, to adopt resolution number 2021-29. Councilmember Aguirre, how do you vote?
Aguirre, aye.
Councilmember Leyva Gonzalez, how do you vote?
Leyva Gonzalez, aye.
Councilmember Fisher, how do you vote?
Fisher, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs, how do you vote?
Spriggs, aye.
And Mayor Dedina, how do you vote?
Dedina, aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Now we have reports number one, continued item from May 5th, 2021, consideration of ordinance 2021-1202, amending the Imperial Beach Municipal Code section 12.33 and resolution 2021-27, establishing policies and procedures for special events that occur in the city of Imperial Beach, and providing an effective date. City Manager Hall will give the report.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Manager Hall. This item was continued from your last meeting, so there's no need to take it off the table. I know that we had a chance to discuss the policies in detail, but we did need to make some clerical moves, and so that's what this really is. And so what we're asking for tonight, so that we can implement the new special event policies that we talked about at your last meeting, we would like to introduce ordinance number 2021-1202, which amends the municipal code that changes the approval process from the city manager approving these special events to having them placed on the consent agenda of the city council. So that would be the first motion that we would ask the council to consider. The second would be passage of resolution 2021-27, which is the actual special events policies, and we would ask that those be passed by resolution. So again, two separate motions, one to introduce the ordinance and the second to pass the resolution. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. City Clerk Kelly, do you have any public comments?
This is City Clerk Kelly. I will start with members of the public participating via Zoom. Please use the raise hand feature if you would like to speak. Okay, there are no raised hands, and I have no written comments.
Great, thank you. We can start with any discussion, starting with Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I think we covered this item pretty well previously. And I really, surprisingly to you, I'm sure I don't have any comments at this point.
We're not surprised. Councilmember Fisher?
Not really much to say. I'm just glad that, the comments that were made at the last meeting regarding this item were brought forth from the other members of the council, and now they're going forward how they should. So that's about it.
Councilmember Leo Gonzalez?
Thanks, Mayor. I don't really have much to say except for I have a good feeling that Courtney's going to be extremely busy this summer.
Great. Councilmember Gary?
No additional comments. I'll be supporting both.
Great. Thank you so much. And City Clerk Kelly, please read the title of the ordinance.
Ordinance number 2021-1202, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Imperial Beach, California, amending Chapter 12.33 of the Imperial Beach Municipal Code concerning special event permits.
I'd like to entertain a motion to introduce ordinance number 2021-1202 by title only, waive further reading of the ordinance, and set the matter for adoption at the next regular scheduled City Council meeting.
Aguirre moves.
Big second.
Thank you.
This is City Clerk Kelly. I will take an oral roll call vote. There has been a motion by Aguirre, second by Spriggs, to introduce ordinance number 2021-1202 by title only, waive further reading of the ordinance, and set the matter for adoption at the next regularly scheduled City Council meeting. Councilmember Aguirre, how do you vote?
Aguirre, aye.
Councilmember Leyva Gonzalez, how do you vote?
Leyva Gonzalez, aye.
Councilmember Fisher, how do you vote?
Fisher, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs, how do you vote?
Spriggs, aye.
And Mayor Dedina, how do you vote?
Dedina, aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Now we have part two, and that's I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 2021-27, establishing the Imperial Beach Special Events Policies and Procedures. Is there a motion?
So moved, Spriggs.
Aguirre, second.
Thank you.
This is City Clerk Kelly. I will now take an oral roll call vote. There has been a motion by Spriggs, second by Aguirre, to adopt resolution number 2021-27. Councilmember Aguirre, how do you vote?
Aguirre, aye.
Councilmember Leyva Gonzalez, how do you vote?
Leyva Gonzalez, aye.
Councilmember Fisher, how do you vote?
Fisher, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs, how do you vote?
Spriggs, aye.
And Mayor Dedina, how do you vote?
Dedina, aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Great, and now we have the reimbursements, disclosures, reports on assignments and committees. I just want to remind my council colleagues, this is something that's clarified, codified under our city code. This is not about your personal political events. I want to make sure that the public understands that we're making that clarification. It's about your city assignments and committees. And so I'd like to invite each council member to speak in the order as they typically seated on the dais, starting with Councilmember Aguirre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on May 6th, I attended the MTS Executive Committee meeting as Councilmember Montgomery Steps alternate, during which we discussed a number of matters related to advertising, Policy 18, which is related to joint development projects for properties under MTS ownership. And on May 7th, I attended SANDAG's Joint Transportation, Regional Planning, and Borders Committee's meeting, also as Councilmember Montgomery Steps alternate. We discussed two important and relevant items to the residents of IB. One was the results of the remote working in San Diego region survey. They presented results about how much traffic and congestion would change because people working remotely. Not surprisingly, South Bay communities weren't able to work remotely because they are frontline workers. And I think that it was behooved the Sandag Board of Directors to know that there is a large portion within their survey of cross-border commuters that weren't taken into consideration. So I requested that in the future we do that. And then on May 10th, along with many members of the City Council, I joined Supervisor Nora Vargas and IBW 465 and SCG&E for the ribbon cutting of the first of 52 community electronic vehicle stations as part of the Power Your Drive program. And then on May 13th, I attended the monthly MTS Board of Directors meeting. We adopted our proposed fiscal year 2022 operating budget. Thankfully, unlike many transit agencies around the country, we have not had to have service cuts, and we continue to provide great service and working towards reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. So very, very grateful that we were able to balance our budget at MTS. And then on May 14th, I attended Sandag's Board of Directors meeting as MTS's representative, during which the proposed amendment to Transnet and the FY 2022 budget were approved as well. And then finally, on May 17th, as a member of the Environmental Justice Task Force chaired by Vice Chair Nora Vargas, I attended that meeting. We had a great presentation from NADBank. They reported that the San Antonio de los Buenos treatment plant, which all of you know discharges close to 40 million gallons of raw sewage into the surf line and affects our water quality on a daily basis. Finally, the Public State Services Commission of Tijuana has submitted an application for funding to improve that wastewater treatment plant. We'll see if that's actually the case. And I also want to share that the rapid testing program has now been approved by EPA and by the state. And what that is a water quality samples that are taken off our shoreline that are intended to monitor if our waters are full of pathogens or not, usually take 24 hours to produce results. They're going to take much less than that, up to 4 hours to produce results. So we discussed the fact that that will be ready and available to be launched this fall. So very stoked to hear about that. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Leo Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. My responsibilities, I didn't attend any committee meetings, but I'd just like to thank Anna Webb and Harry Hollies, because 2 of my little libraries have been completed on Monday, and I delivered them to 2 of the residents in my district, and I'm very excited and looking forward to seeing them decorated and painted, and then I'm going to go out there and install them. So thank you, Anna. Thank you, Harry. I appreciate you very much. That's all I have. Thank you.
And Councilmember Fisher.
Nothing to report at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple items, but I wanted to first say that I think if there are challenges with us taking too much time, we should limit our comments to generally 3 minutes or less, unless there's something really significant involving policy that or issues that need to be discussed, so that we can have our council reports at the beginning of the city council meeting. I think it's important that we have our comments at the beginning of the city council meeting, because they very often help public comment get structured around some of the activities and events that we represent the city on. And I think that's very important. Coming now at the end of the meeting, that doesn't happen. So I think we can find a way to consolidate our comments and still let the public know, what we're doing, and give them an opportunity to comment. And that's a very valuable public service, it seems to me.
If that's coming from you, Councilmember Spriggs, I concur. So I'll start tonight. I'll do my watch when I start.
Okay. Anyway, last Thursday, the 6th, I attended on behalf of the city, the Metro JPA meeting where we approved the budgets that I had previously reported on to the council that we discussed in the Finance Committee. The Last Monday, the league had its San Diego division meeting that I attended as well.
Member Spriggs, you may want to turn off your video. It looks like you're frozen. Maybe just go to audio. We can't hear you, and your screen's frozen.
Rise with the Coastal Commission and the county coastal representatives. And this will be a very interesting one that I'll report on at our next city council meeting, because for the first time, we're going to hear the Coastal Commission and staff suggestions for best practices in response to the issues that we cities, coastal cities, and the coastal counties have been putting forth for the last several meetings. So that should be very interesting to see if any of what we've been saying has registered. Thanks. That's all I have to report.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. On May 10th, I attended the Sandag Litter Committee and was pleased that right at the same time, the governor announced $1.5 billion in investment in cleaning up our highways and roadways in California, along with additional environmental abatement measures related to highway litter and homeless camps, et cetera. So that's good news. And was pleased to have a conversation with the governor's staff about that and about supporting that. So I do know that they appreciated having our Sandag Litter Committee focus on that, one of the few committees like that in the state. On May 10th, I attended a charging station ribbon cutting ceremony with council members Jack Fisher, Paloma Aguirre, and Matthew Leva Gonzalez, and our own staff in San Diego Gas. Was nothing on that whole time?
No, just you hit it with your paper.
Oh, sorry. Okay. And then on May 12th, I met with Consul Sue Sarnio, the Consul of the United States in Tijuana, and expressed our concern about the lack of political will of the United States State Department in pushing Mexico to address transborder sewage flows. We believe that the United States government, vis-a-vis the State Department, needs to do a lot more to push Mexico to clean up and fix its sewer system. So it's good to have that discussion with her. On May 13th, we had a meeting on the Tijuana sewage issues and infrastructure needs with San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria, County Supervisor Nora Vargas, port staff, including Port Commissioners Rafael Castellanos and Dan Malcolm, to talk about, more importantly, sort of like the strategy for investing in the sewage issue. And the consensus is we need a comprehensive solution, and that we need to continue to push Mexico and incentivize Mexico to fix its sewer system, but obviously not subsidize all of Mexico's sewer system. So that was good. On May 14th, I attended the Sandag board meeting. And then on May 15th, we did a bike tour of Coastal Campus. May 15th, with the Navy. I want to thank the Navy for that and our city staff for organizing that. And then yesterday, May 18th, I was invited to participate in the Ocean Visions International Conference on a panel on sea level rise adaptation around the United States with the chief scientist of NOAA, researchers from the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, climate scientists from Liberty Mutual Insurance, the chief scientist for Esri, the GIS company, and the mayor of Savannah, Georgia. That was a great workshop that could result in additional federal financing for our adaptation measures. And the consensus was that we need to have small, practical projects that focus on things like neighborhoods at risk, as well as public infrastructure. So I thought that was really nice to talk about. And then for San Diego Community Power, I attended the Finance and Risk Committee. And just to let you know, Imperial Beach will be the first city to roll out the San Diego Community Power program, so that's nice. And then today, the most important meeting was a meeting with the EPA, and we met with top EPA staff along with representatives from the city of San Diego, the city of Chula Vista, the state of California, the federal government, the Port of San Diego, and I'm probably missing somebody, the county of San Diego, to talk about overall the direction in which the EPA is heading. Right now, they're proposing a bunch of alternatives, one which would include a comprehensive solution to address most of the wastewater flows. And they also had an update from the IBWC to talk about The short-term actions the IBWC will be taking to stop flows in the meantime. So what I emphasize is we can't wait 5 more days, 5 more weeks, 5 more months, or 5 more years to make this happen. And so I was elated to hear that they've heard our feedback and they're moving forward, but obviously a lot more needs to be done, and reiterated the fact that Mexico needs to push. We need to be pushing Mexico a lot harder on this. So with that, I think that's it. And Jack, I called you, right? Thank you. Okay. Great. With that, I'm going to adjourn the regular meeting. Thanks, everybody, and have a great evening.